Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to Northern Disclosure, the podcast that follows the Northern Exposure TV series. And I am here with my lovely and talented host, Janine Turner. Hey, Janine, how you doing?
Fine and dandy. How are you, Rob?
Fine and dandy as well. Yeah, it's been fun doing this. Every week we get together and we look at an episode and we try to find a guest from the show. And this week we have the lovely Jessica Lundy, who played Elaine, my ex-fiance, and she was on for 2 episodes. And it'll be fun to talk to her. And you can listen wherever you get your podcast, and you can hit that subscribe button so you know what's coming down the pike. And also you can watch us on the Northern Disclosure YouTube channel. And that way you can see how pretty Janine is and Jessica when she comes on.
And how handsome Rob is.
Oh, thank you. That's why I say that, just so I can get it back. So what's new, Janine?
Well, as usual, my life around me is a whirlwind. And this morning was one of those days. And I think, oh, okay, I get to watch the Northern Exposure episode. I know I'm going to have an hour of happiness. And so I watched the show this morning, the episode Roots, and yet another endearing, fun, special show. I can't wait to talk with you about it. All kinds of uniqueness that you don't see on other episodes, and you and I had a lot of fun. I got to work with Adam, and that was fun.
Adam was great. We have Richard Cummings and Adam Arkin on. It's got a lot going on, and John Corbett, Chris Stevens' storyline is fascinating. So Roots is in terms of this would be episode 6, season 3, although IMDb has it as episode 7, but Amazon has it as episode 6. It was written by Dennis Koenig, who I don't think wrote any other episodes, and it was directed by the lovely Sandy Smolin, who also directed our episodes Sex, Lies, and Ed's Tapes and The Big Kiss. He directed 3 episodes, and I remember having such a nice time with him. I became friendly with him. I knew his wife, and he did such a nice job. There were so many nice touches. All the stuff with the African dance and the little subtle moments between you and I. That kind of this really plays on Maggie's jealousy of possibly not being able to have a relationship that possibly might happen between Joel and him. It was fun to watch. I'll read the synopsis, which is Elaine, Joel's ex-fiance, who is now a widow, comes to Sicily to visit him, but he is not very happy to see her. Maggie unintentionally plays matchmaker for the ex-couple. Chris' half-brother Bernard comes to town with news that Chris begins to dream of Africa. Adam takes a job with Holling to cover his insurance premiums.
So fun, so incredibly fun. And it's wild as I'm sitting here watching this as we record this. I think about my Texas qualities, and we're always raised to smile and whatnot. I'm always smiling. It's just the kind of thing I do, especially when I'm I don't know. I'm a smiler, I guess. And I remember on Northern Exposure, the producers said to me, "Quit smiling." Like, don't smile. Quit smiling.
Right.
And that's why, and we didn't really get to touch on it, but when we were doing the episode Animals Are Us, when Rick comes back as a dog, it was kind of fun because you finally see Maggie in a skirt and a hat, and she's smiling. Anywho,
it was great. Yeah, you looked great in those outfits.
Well, I think that's the wonderful thing about the show is we get to do so many different things. And here is Corbett in his storyline. He's able to go out there and dance in the African dance. And I thought that coverage that Sandy did was really terrific. And the dancers, excellent. The casting of the dancers, they were amazing. And then he's having to learn the language, the native language, and they're speaking in the native language.
Then he shows up with cornrows.
Yeah. He says he thinks he's black, but he actually wasn't. His brother was, because I guess his father had an affair with an African-American woman, I guess is what happened. But then Corbett was taking on that identity through dreams, which they resolve in the end.
It's one of my favorite storylines in the whole series is the relationship between those two, that their brothers, one's black, one's white, and that they have this kind of unconscious, connection in their dream life, and the way they finish each other's sentences, that they are that they share DNA, and it expresses itself outwardly often. I just find that charming, and the way they played it was just great.
The way that Dad was remember they were realistic, go, Dad was a traveling man.
Yeah.
I love that line. Dad was a traveling man, which he was a truck driver. And that's when he
Right.
had Sigmund Freud in the truck and all that when the episode when he first comes to town. But if you notice, they're walking down the street at one point having this conversation about the brothers and the fair. And do you notice a truck went right, a big Mack truck went right past them. And I thought, oh, that could have been a little bit homage to, Dad was a traveling man. Dad was a truck driver. Did you catch that?
Oh,
The
I
big
did.
logging truck.
It happens, it's a regular feature. And we've talked about it before. It was like they would pay these trucks to kind of hang around and drive through a shot. And we would have to wait for them to reset and have them drive all around the block to come back with these
That's
big
true.
trucks. And there's another one at the end, which is that lovely shot of you and I walking off into the horizon, and a hay truck goes by. And it looks so kind of accidental, but that wasn't. They paid them, and they had to have them hang around. And at one point, there's a shot when Chris and Bernard are standing outside the radio station. A truck goes by, and there's a big a huge potbelly pig on the back of a truck.
In this episode?
Absolutely, yeah, it's huge.
It would be interesting to talk to Sandy about it. If that was a kind of a punctuation of Dad was a truck driver, a traveling man, because that truck was really close. A lot of times we see him in the background, but the boom, that truck was just there. But it may have been something that I'm imbuing upon the situation. It may have just been coincidental.
Yeah, we know a lot about it. And, look, a lot of things become symbolic inadvertently, by repetition. So I don't know if he thought about that, but it certainly works, right?
Yeah, it does. And I thought our storyline, and I loved, by the way, having that kind of hangover scene with Adam Arkin or Adam, and my mother loves to watch it. She's 88 living with me, and it just makes her happy. So she wants to always watch it. And I pop in when I'm going downstairs, upstairs. And I heard that scene a couple of weeks ago when Mom was watching it. And there was something different about that scene. Did you catch it?
Well, you're talking about the scene with you and Adam in the bar, and you're hungover.
I'm hungover. Yeah, which was a really fun scene.
I thought it was a really, really fun scene. What was different about it?
No music.
Oh,
there was no music in the bar. And
Oh,
I don't
wow.
know that I would have caught it upstairs because I watch it on my phone when I'm upstairs, but downstairs it was really obvious to me that there was no music in the bar. But that was fun to be able to work with him. I loved the fact that Maggie, would have these sort of hangovers and the depth of, and all that dialogue was so rich, like
Really
watch
good.
it, pal. And but the scenes with you and Jessica or Elaine were also very touching, and a very different note for Jessica because the actress Jessica who's portraying Elaine. Because in the first episode when she was here, it was more comedic, but it had depth as well. But this one, she was much more somber, and I thought she did a terrific job. But the whole interplay, and that dancing bears, I remember filming that scene. There's scenes I don't always remember filming, but remember when I'm trying to intercede at the bar when y'all are sitting there having dinner, and I said, do you want to go watch the bears dance? You know what I mean? They throw food and it's really funny. I remember filming that scene and how much fun that was, but the way I'm kicked out. And
Do you know what I want to mention? I'm not going to say this for tawdry reasons, but I'd love to hear your thoughts, because I noticed that you weren't wearing a bra.
oh,
And you looked great. And the reason I noticed it was, aside from that you looked great, was it always seems, network TV insists that women wear bras. It drove me crazy when I direct and stuff. They'd be in a nightgown in bed, and they'd have to wear a bra. And I'm just wondering if you remember how it is that no one's. Was that your
I have
idea?
a story. I have a story
Okay.
about that. It's interesting that you would bring that up. Really interesting that you would bring that up. So I'm such a sensory sort of actor studio type of actress that if you recall, when I first got there, I was wearing a belt around my waist and learning how to fix things. And I wanted to get into it sort of in that method acting sort of way. And I thought Maggie probably wouldn't wear a bra. You know what I mean?
Right.
She'd just be this natural.
I
It's funny
agree,
that you would catch that. And I don't know if it was that episode or it must have been after this episode then. They brought me in the office and
Huh.
said, "You have to wear a bra."
Right.
And
That must have
I,
been where I first started to become conscious of it because I must have known
yeah.
about that.
And I said, I don't really, I don't know that she has to, but they want it. And they also said to me, by the way, you also have to lose weight.
Oh
You're
my.
becoming a superstar now and you need to lose weight. And we're going to get
Wow.
a trainer for you. And that was fun. That was a really
Wow.
fun
Who said
conversation.
that?
Oh, well, doesn't really matter.
Well, but the bra thing is interesting because women are beautiful without bras, with bras, but it's like it just seems so restrictive and so kind of patriarchal that these
Uh-huh.
networks would say to you as this character, and it didn't seem anything except real and and I think even Jessica wasn't wearing a bra now because when I saw that I was like, well, who else is wearing a bra? But like
Well, it's just funny you would say that.
well,
Because, well,
it could because it's a pet peeve of mine. Like I would be as I said, I'd be shooting these scenes with people in bed, and they'd be in a nightgown, and they'd have to have a bra underneath it because you weren't allowed to quote see the nipple. It was like what,
I
you
thought
know?
this was way beyond. I thought they had said that to me much earlier, but maybe not. Because quite frankly, I didn't catch whether I was wearing. I did kind of look. I think I did kind of look, but I thought I must have been wearing one because I thought it was earlier. But I think the thing that when they told me I had to lose weight, I thought, wow. And I look back, I wasn't anything heavy about me at that time. I
Right,
know, especially
absolutely
in
not.
today's standards. But I had all those high waisted jeans. So finally I said, look, if you want me to look thinner, then put me in side zip pants and more peg leg type of pants and take me out of these jeans. And so we did. We changed. Maybe after this episode or two, you'll start seeing that I was wearing different types of pants.
Huh? I do remember the side zip.
Yeah, you
Right,
do?
that would
Well,
be
there you
tough
go.
to hear for sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, you look great, and you're really charming in this, and you're the way you played the jealousy and the subtlety of the way you did it, the little looks, it was good. It's a fun, whenever there's a triangle dynamic, it's always fun.
You had so many wonderful subtle moments. The honesty of the way you played when she arrived was beautiful. And then but also there was a moment, maybe when I came in with my hand, there was just a little sparkle. You could see that little flint of attraction there, and the vulnerability that we both had in this episode. I think made when we came together at the end even more charming. Is sort of my
Right.
thoughts because we were both pretty vulnerable.
I like when
Anyway,
I say when you come in with your hand and I say, don't you want me to wrap it? And you're like, well, tie a knot around it, tie a rope around it, Fleischman. I don't even know what that means, but it was funny. All
well, you
right,
could see the
so
look on my face too. That my hand really wasn't hurt.
right,
She's
totally. So
it's fun.
Jessica has been acting forever now, just like all of us. She was on the show The Inspectors from 2015 to 2019. She wrote 25 episodes, which I want to hear about. She has been on everything from Two and a Half Men to Castle to Criminal Minds to my show Numbers. She was on Without a Trace. She was on Seinfeld, which plays on a loop in my house because of my daughter. And then she was in the movies Caddyshack and Bright Lights, Big City. And she was also on the reboot of the Carol Burnett show. So she is like, a journeywoman actor who's has incredible credentials and credits. And we just adored having her on the show. And howdy, Jessica.
Hi, you guys. I've been listening and enjoying so much everything you talked about. And for the record, I did wear a bra.
You did, okay.
I
Everyone's gonna think,
think
like,
that's
why?
great.
Where's Rob's eyes going? But,
But you know, Rob, I really, there's so many things that I want to remember to talk to you about. But I thought that point was actually really interesting because after watching the episodes, which was such an amazing treat, I hadn't seen them in so many years. And just brought back such great memories and also a reminder of what a brilliant show it was. How you two were just fantastic and the writing was exceptional. And every character, every actor was just perfect in their role. So it was such a treat. But watching both episodes, Russian Flu and Roots, what you said was absolutely true. Do you know in Russian Flu, when you took off my nightgown, it was very clear that I was wearing to smear on the.
I remember clocking. You could actually see a piece of it, the bra, at some point.
It was clear as day when I saw it, and I thought, I mean, it just takes you right out of it. But there was no chance on broadcast TV that you wouldn't be.
Except Janine got it. I mean, it would be interesting to not to we need to track the episodes, but it's interesting to know when it started and when it stopped.
It probably stopped pretty soon after this episode.
So you came on the episode Hi Ohio Ipsonio, or that, I don't know if it was called that, but that was
Russian flu.
Russian Flu, which was a great episode, where we first met you. Did you have to go through a big process to get the part? Do you remember?
You know what? I don't remember the audition process, but I'm sure that I read several times because it was, an important role, and I was so thrilled to get it because I just loved the writing. The show hadn't been on. That was the first season.
Oh, wow.
So it was kind of coming in blind to everything, but you two were so welcoming. And I remember worrying about, how to create that kind of chemistry, when you're engaged and they've been together forever. And I was so worried about making that believable. But I have to say, I was thrilled to see it because just watching it as kind of trying to be an objective viewer, I thought we made a great couple, and I bought that there was a long history.
Totally.
And I really thank you for that.
You and I connected right away. We just completely, we just connected. It was easy. I remember it was like as soon as you showed up, we just kind of got into step, and it was easy.
And that's always a wild thing to show up on set and suddenly have to have romance. And it's really interesting. And it's like bringing the organic chemistry, but also whatever you have to do, to bring that to life. But you had such a wonderful blend in Russian Flu of sexuality, vulnerability, likability, and humor. You were so funny as well. You just did you were exceptional.
It was a wonderfully written part. You can't go wrong with that. And the situation was just unbelievably perfect.
When he was rubbing the Hi Ohio Ipsonio on you
and I used that for years on a demo reel because I felt like it was one of those magical things where you don't have to act. Do you know what I mean? The situation, that stuff. And Rob, your faces about the smell, I thought were just pitch perfect.
But you too, you were like crying, you trying to not cry.
It was cold, Rob. I don't know if you remember, but back then it was freezing. I think this was shot during the winter months in Washington. So the place was cold, and that stuff, whatever it was
mud, basically.
So, you just, if you let yourself be, it was all there. But
right.
It was such a treat to see that again. And I really thought that, especially the goodbye scene there, I thought that's what made me so stunned when I read that script for Roots. I married someone else. It took so much. Wanted to ask you guys, were you in on any of that? Who decided that? How did they decide that Elaine went off and married an older judge?
We didn't have anything to do with the writing per se. Although in the later years we might have had more influence, but in that regard, I don't think we had anything to do with it. But the trick for them was to keep the energy moving between Maggie and Joel, but without consummating. Will they, won't they was the whole thing. And so I think that how do you get Joel to let go of his disappointment for losing Elaine? You have him marry someone else, and then there's no hope. I think so. It's probably how they came up with an older judge. I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if one of the writers, had some situation like that or something.
I wondered because I was looking for it. There's a scene. I love so many of the scenes that when you were talking earlier, the one in the bar, Janine, with you and Adam, when he's psychoanalyzing both of you, one of my favorites. And the scene when you came back to let that to warn him that Elaine's talons were out for him, and when he says that she's gone, that moment. And when you asked, "Are you okay?" It was just so beautiful. And that's what, because I was thinking, the scene I was thinking of was when Joel and Elaine are talking at night and they're in separate beds, and the moonlight's coming in, and he asked, why? And Elaine's answer was, "I can't explain it. I fell in love." And I was like, oh, come on, give me more than that. Because that was I mean, I wondered, I had to work really hard for myself to figure out why, especially when the last time you saw us together. Man, I would not have guessed it, but I mean, that's what makes it.
I just think it's interesting. We don't ever think about this really because we're so busy in the grind of it all that we knew you had gotten married in other episodes. But when you came back, you didn't know that you had gotten married in other episodes. But see, we'd already gone past that, but you didn't know that. And that's interesting. I didn't really think about that at all. And you talked about that vulnerability between all of us. See, I think you were vulnerable, very vulnerable in Roots. And Rob was very vulnerable in the show. And then I was very vulnerable in this show. And when you touched on that last moment when I come in and say the talons are out, I was moved by that too. It's kind of rarely do you get moved by your own work, but I did kind of get a little teary. That was the sweetest moment between Fleischman and O'Connell, so to speak. But it was so simple too, right? And I think that's what I learned on Northern Exposure is just how to relax and let the camera be there, and find my choice, but then just let it be simple. And in that simplicity, we had such a connection there. It was interesting that you would note that as well. But it was kind of moving.
It really was moving, and it made that moment when you were talking early about walking off into the sunset or onto the horizon, so to speak. It was so lovely because it came out of that moment and just the ease with which you were together, which is unusual. Do you know what I mean? It seemed like there was a new closeness.
It's amazing how they were able to calibrate that over time without going too far. Because when we didn't get together until when, Janine, the characters.
Fourth season.
Right. So 4 years. So that's like 66, 70 episodes or something like that. And it's such a hard thing. But what you get is, which I think is really sweet about them, is you see the friendship blossoming, and I always think that's more important than the romance between two people when they come together, is that they can be friends, and there is some kind of bond that just keeps getting deeper and deeper. And that moment when they walk off, you don't think they're going off to make out or, get it on or anything. You just think they're going off to continue to get to know each other in a deep way, which it's so lovely.
It's very Casablanca. Like this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
Yeah, you're
like
right.
that.
It is Casablanca.
You're right. And there's an ease. There was just such a comfortable feeling between you that kind of closeness is so rare. That's really special.
If you think about it, y'all had the greatest sex, Elaine and Fleischman, when you knew it was going to end.
Yeah, that's always great.
Right? Right? When there was that kind of a disconnect, you had the greatest sex. It's kind of interesting the way that all puts together.
Breakup
I
sex.
love that scene. I thought, Rob, I loved your, I think Elaine says, about it was a mistake to come here and I shouldn't have. And your speech about, no, you gave us back the past.
I love that. That's a great, you gave us back our past. What a great idea, to have that. First of all, that you can lose your past. It can be taken away, through animosity or whatever, and then to restore it. And, again, it's the way that Northern Exposure gives gifts. It gives little philosophical gifts to people to think about. I always personally never understand when people tell me, "Oh, I hate my mother and father were that way. They hated each other until my dad died. Like even though they were divorced for 70 years or whatever. Like I never understand when people break up that they hate each other. I feel like I understand why you might when you do break up, but that you don't find your way back to the place that was the germ of love.
Like my parents who divorced and married each other 3 times.
That's an amazing story unto itself. We'll have to talk about that.
That's a whole nother story.
That's a whole series. That sounds like I would watch.
But they would never let anybody. Anyway, that's a whole nother story.
That would be a good series. I like that. Like the three marriage. It's just called 3 Marriages, and you watch each one. What it's like, whether it's different or the same, or
50s,
that's a good
idea. The one in the 50s, the one in the 70s, and the one in the 2000s.
Well, Jessica, you're a writer. I didn't know you were a writer.
Yeah, tell us about that. That's really cool.
that was just a very interesting. I mean, I've always dabbled in like sketch comedy writing, punch up dialogue, just little things along the way. But that situation, we shot in Charleston, South Carolina, and the actors were union, but the writers were not. So they had a few writers at the beginning, and then were picking up scripts wherever they could. So it kind of became out of necessity.
Huh.
The executive producer and I started fixing what we had to, and then it rolled into just being in the writer's room all the time. And we had a bare bones staff. There were maybe 2 other people writing, and we just kind of churned out episode by episode. We were never ahead, and it was the most exhilarating experience to go from writing all day until they said you'd have to go to the set, and to go film a few scenes to get to and we were filming 2 episodes at once. It was really done.
That's exhausting. Yeah,
it was exhausting, but I have to say it was just creatively one of the most fulfilling experiences, because talk about immersion. It was just total immersion, and you use every part of your brain if you're acting and writing.
Well, it's empowering too. It's empowering to know that you're not just in it, because all of us, Rob directs and writes, I direct and write. And I think that's one of the things that producers need to be a little more clued into, which it sounds like on that show they were. You've got acting talent, but these actors have a lot more potential than just the one thing. So the fact that you could have that kind of empowerment and that sort of enlightenment and that joy and that fulfillment, and then go out to act, I'm sure it made everything feel.
Yeah, it was the most wonderful thing, and I'm sure you both feel the same way. I think if you look back, maybe, I can't believe in the 90s when this show was happening and so many things, there was a real delineation between you're an actor or you're behind the camera, you're a director.
Absolutely.
That has changed, I think, so much.
Every show now has, I mean, anyone with any kind of name, even not a huge one, is a producer on their show now. And I remember when I was negotiating for numbers, I was like, at that point I had been directing, I had been producing, and I wanted to be a producer. And they were like, and they were like, absolutely not. That does not happen. We don't allow it. And since then, it's just like it's a given that you're going to make an actor or producer. Do you remember working with Sandy Smolin?
I do. He was very kind.
I remember
he
was great.
Everybody behind the scenes you had a wonderful crew. Sandy was lovely. He was just, I remember, because it was more of a challenge. I was more known for and had done more comedy. And this was like Janine was saying, was a very different note and a different tone. And I think he was really helpful.
Did you find it hard to walk in the room and have to have all that kind of different tenor, different tone, the emotional, you had a death you'd bring to the, all that you were bringing, the guilt. Did you find that difficult to find that note? You did a beautiful job, but that's not easy to get there.
Thank you. I do. I think it got easier over the years, but I think when I first started out, I was just more comfortable with the comedic, lighter roles, and this was definitely a challenge. And I think it was so helpful to have known Rob from the work in the first episode. And Sandy was so kind and generous. That makes a huge difference.
So the Carol Burnett show is a sketch show. That was.
Oh my God. I want to talk about the Carol Burnett show. I love the Carol Burnett show. I wish we could bring back something like that today.
Wait, Janine, do you remember this? Because this was one of the highlights of my career. This was one of the great moments ever. So I was obsessed with the Carol Burnett show, the original one, right? And I feel like so much of it influenced me. One day we're shooting, Janine. I don't remember who it was. I think it was in my Fleischman's cabin, and the wall was open, and they yelled "cut," and I looked, and behind the camera was standing Tim Conway and Harvey Korman.
No.
And I was like, no one told me they were coming. They were huge fans of the show. They happened to be in Seattle for something, and they asked if they could come watch us shoot. And I was just like on cloud nine because Tim Conway, was just such a huge influence.
It must have been one of the days I wasn't working. Maybe we can bring Carol Burnett on this show. That would be fun. I've spoken to her a couple of times. That would be really fun.
Wait, so how was that working with her?
Carol Burnett.
it was really, it was wonderful, but it was difficult because I too had the best memories. Watched it growing up, loved that show. Tim and Harvey. That would be an amazing thing. And I think it was very difficult. It was in the 90s, and to try to, the idea was good to try to reboot a sketch comedy show, because it was just what they had was such magic that I think it was hard for her to say, okay, I'm going to do something the same but different.
Right.
Because it was all young writers, and they were shooting for almost not a Saturday Night Live vibe, but something closer to that. And I think there was a lot of stress within that about feeling comfortable with newer material. So we kind of veered back and did some older sketches that they had done previously. So it was a lovely experience. Like, everybody on the show was fantastic. They had a really nice ensemble, and the writers were great. But ultimately, it didn't work out because I almost feel like it was such magic the first time around.
It's very tricky. Yeah, that's what Janine keeps saying about. Well, when we talk about doing a reboot, I've tried, we've tried, but Janine's mind is, why mess with something, if it worked.
Well, I would just, not that I wouldn't want to be a part of it, but it just seems so risky. Like, that's exactly what you're talking about. And it's interesting. They should have trusted that if they brought back Carol Burnett from the 70s to the 90s, that people would still love it. And that's what I'm afraid what would happen with Northern Exposure. They would try to do the same thing. They try to modernize it instead of letting it just be what it was. Because I would personally love to see the Carol Burnett of the 70s here today. I think that would be hilarious.
It's tricky though, because stuff is contextual and time, certain stuff, although that's one of the beautiful things we're learning watching Northern Exposure is it is somewhat timeless. It does. Like, did you notice, Jessica, that it didn't look like you were watching a period piece? If you watch Law and Order now, it looks dated.
I agree, except there are certain telltale signs. Like, I had eyebrows then, and I realized how different in the 90s you plucked to oblivion. And I did that later, and I thought and the hair. I mean, the certain things I remember of that time, and the shoulder pads. It made me. You and I in one scene, I definitely were competing for who had the biggest shoulder pads.
That was in the other show, right? At the plane when I'm wearing that yellow jacket with.
Yes, that yellow jacket. Oh, that was so perfect.
Yeah. You're right, but it still doesn't, because fashion is so fluid nowadays. It doesn't take me out of it. I don't know why.
It's because it's Alaska. It's because it's Alaska, right? And it's like you could still picture people wearing high-waisted jeans and boots and big coats in Alaska. And I think if you're watching LA Law, they're wearing the big, like you talk about, big shoulder pads and thing. But it's Alaska. I was in Alaska recently. They still wear jeans like that. It's more utilitarian than it is fashion.
I have to tell you though, in the dialogue and in the tone and everything, you're absolutely right. There's a timeless quality to everyone's delivery because it was so real and so natural.
Right, and the themes were universal. But I was noticing that, since we're talking about, the contrast between comedy and drama, it's so, for the first, I don't know, 3 or 4 scenes, she's so down and so kind of frightened and heavy. And I think that's interesting that that Sandy allowed that, that he didn't try to take you out of that. Do you remember what was how much of that was you, how much was in the script? It was just this, I guess, having lost her husband and now hoping to rekindle with Joey. She's the only one who calls him Joey.
I know. That's why I thought it was so interesting to see that first one, the lightness and the attraction and the fun between them. And then I think this was a lot me because there was definitely great fear coming back and guilt, tremendous guilt. So I certainly wasn't talked out of that or directed away from that.
It was nice. I liked how deep they, because I mean, Janine talks a lot about them trying to not let her get too dark.
I was never allowed to have a tear. I never allowed. I had one in that. This what's the one we just did with where Ed did the little movie. But I actually had a little tear, and I'm like, oh my gosh, they let me show it, because when Rick got hit by a satellite, what Rob's referring to, Jessica, is when Rick got hit by a satellite, I wanted to have emotion. My boyfriend just died, but they're like, yeah, it's a comedy. It's a comedy. So Rob makes a good point that they let you go there, which they really never would let it.
But Janine, was it because they wanted to make sure that the tone was light, or they didn't want you to be perceived as weak at all?
They wanted comedy. They wanted it to be light, and but that's okay. To me, if you have one character that's being, and the rest is, anyway, it is what it is. But Rob makes a good point that they let you do that, so that was nice.
Yeah, and I thought even there was almost the only time there was a lightness was when we were in the bar, when you came up to us and tried to convince
The Bears.
to go to the Bears, yes. And the look, I love. There was a moment too when we both said we're tired, and you knew where that was going, and you almost wouldn't get out of the booth. I had to.
Yeah, you nudged me out of the booth.
I love that. So I mean, there was definitely humor in it, in the scene. But you're right. Overall, it was kind of a very melancholy.
But then it shifted. It did shift. I just remember clocking that it was going on for a couple scenes longer than I thought they would normally allow. And then I think Sandy was great with actors. His wife, Pamela Reed, was an excellent actress. And so he just was very sensitive. It was it's funny why he only directed 3. I don't know how that happens. I guess they go on and there's no slots left or something. But I could have had him direct more, I'm sure.
The cinematographer was Jim Hayman, wasn't it?
At this point, it was Frank Prinzi.
Oh, Frank.
Jimmy
okay.
was there when you did the first Russian Flu. And then Frank Prinzi came in, and then Gordon Lonsdale finished it. So there were 3 over the course of the 5-6 years, and all distinctly different.
Yeah. Well, talk to us about the memories of just being on the set.
I have to tell you, and I'm sure you remember this much more clearly than I do, but I know that the first time I got there, and I know it was winter and it was cold up there, and it was almost like shooting an independent film.
Absolutely.
The trailers were small, and everything was. It just felt like it was. We were doing like a guerrilla shoot.
The budgets were so low that I mean I used to have to fight for them to give second meal to the crew. They weren't even coming up. They'd be like, "Oh, we did it last night." I'm like, "Yeah, well, we're here tomorrow."
I'm hungry now.
But did that change? 'Cause I remember a change
Absolutely.
coming back when the show was a huge hit.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it was like, this was a different world, which was so thrilling to see. It was like being rewarded in a way.
We moved sound stages. The first sound stages you were on were just in a kind of tiny little warehouse. And then we moved to a bigger warehouse. And then I got a big trailer. And then Janine got a big trailer. And then we all got big cars and drivers. And, it changed as success. And success is a double-edged sword. It has a lot of good things, but it also corrupts.
Did you feel increased pressure then to maintain the things, or
I mean, there's always a sense of pressure, but I wasn't aware of it in terms of ratings. I just personally always have a pressure to do better, to strive to do more. I'm rarely satisfied with what I do. I watch the dailies. I got in my contract that they would give me a copy of dailies, and so I watched them every day for 5 years, so I could kind of understand what was going on.
And I did too.
How did that affect you though? Because sometimes I've done that myself, and sometimes if you're too critical, which I think we all tend to be in that when we do this, it can. Did it affect you feeling free to do things on on set.
I had to learn how to get over the vanity aspect of it, how I looked and stuff like that. And then I was able to get objective, and it helped me because I learned how to direct. I learned a lot about film grammar watching those dailies. But I did calibrate my performances. If you watch my performances from the first episode to the 100th episode, it's a very different actor. You're watching someone who's come out of the theater for a decade. Everything was demonstrative and big and physical. And by the 100th episode, I'm like really quiet and much more still, and I think it helped me. But I do understand that a lot of people don't like, Johnny Depp is a guy who never watches his stuff. He can't watch it. It freaks him out. And I don't feel the need to watch it at this stage in my life, but then it was hugely valuable. But I remember having a fight with Josh because I started asking on day one to watch the dailies, and they were like, no, it was the same thing we were talking about, the delineation between actors and production, and they were like, no, no, no. And I remember Josh saying that he thought it would affect my performance, that I would start to change it, and it did, but as I maintained, I was a professional and I wasn't looking to hurt my performance. I was looking to improve it.
Mm-hmm. And Rob was like Big Brother, right? So he got it, and I'm like, I want it too, like the little sister, I want it too. But I learned what worked and what didn't. When I make choices, how is it going through emotions of my soul and projecting on my face, and how is it being captured on the screen? And so it really taught me a lot about how to motivate myself, what choices to make, what the camera and I think I echo what Rob was saying. By the third season, I probably relaxed into it all a little bit. I think that's one of the things I remember the most about being sort of a troupe actor, where we had so many episodes, is the more and more that it went on, the more I could just trust my instrument, that it would be there. That to just relaxation was the biggest part. When I teach kids and work with kids, I'm like, relaxation is the biggest. Make your choices, but you've got to relax. If you don't relax, everything's blocked. Nothing's going to come out. And so I think that watching those dailies and you're right, Rob, a lot of directors don't want you to watch it.
Jessica, are you someone who doesn't like to watch yourself?
Generally, no, I don't like to, but I agree with you that when I get past the cringe factor and the vanity, I learn so much. And I have to say, even watching these episodes, it was something Janine mentioned too. I was able to separate enough to think, oh, I really like that, or that was interesting, or I don't remember doing that, and to actually appreciate the performance, which is weird to say of your own performance. I can always do that with other people, but to be able to give yourself a little bit of credit. And I realized I wish I had done that more along the way, because maybe it would have given me more confidence, the way you're talking about, to be able to calibrate things more instead of being so afraid to be disappointed.
It gave me great confidence. That's a good way to put it.
I'll also say sometimes we saw great takes that they didn't use. You know what I mean? It's like, why didn't they use that moment? Because there were sometimes so many free moments. You remember, Rob, all those moments where we would go, which is very sort of popular now, and I've done it with Robert Altman and Friday Night Lights. But we kind of have these improvisational moments, these kind of really free moments, and then they wouldn't use them. So that's what producers get afraid of. They get afraid that we're going to go. It's like, why didn't you use take 4? You know what I mean?
Sometimes they got a little precious with their, and I understand it, but I think the real wise creatives go for whatever's the best thing. And I think a lot of times they got stuck on their writing. I remember watching multiple takes of me like taking off my glasses, and then you cut to me and I take off my glasses again, and I'd call them and say, why would you put that? Why would you put the shot? It takes the audience away. It's the continuity's off. I took off my glasses and I take them off again. And they said, well, because you didn't say the lines right in the other ones, and I probably changed a word, but like that to me, the film dictates the cut, not the script.
But they were very, if I remember correctly, there wasn't a lot of, especially early on, not a lot of improv. You
Definitely
stuck.
not.
No.
Yeah.
Mm-mm. No,
Right.
and that's okay in this case because the writing was so beautiful,
Oh,
especially
It
the
was.
first 4 seasons. You know, it's just so incredibly impeccable, and you didn't hear any words like stuff or it was no slang, no
it was so
cursing.
smart. I have to say,
Yeah.
yeah, there were moments, Rob, when you would have these massive monologues almost of just so much great material.
Yeah.
And there was some moments in your delivery, it was almost like Woody Allen-esque. There was such a New
Totally.
York feel to it.
I heard a
You
couple
know?
Woody Allen jumping. I can't remember which one, but in this show, it's like, oh, that's so Woody.
Yes.
Well, you've had quite the career, Jessica. Moving on, you'd have had a wonderful body of work.
Thank you. You know, you mentioned shows that I had forgotten. It's interesting. There, I look back and I think, yeah, I've been around a long time. I mean, you have that feeling too, I'm sure. It's like this started so long ago, and I look back though. I really think we were very lucky to have been around in that time, the late '80s and '90s. There was so much available. There was so much opportunity. And I mean, I know there's a lot of production now, there's a lot of streaming alternatives, but the business itself is very different.
Well, the business now is diluted, and I mean, and it's hard to get a hit show or to make stars or anything of that nature because we just have a plethora. I mean, we just have this monumental amount of choices. It's almost staggering. It's
Right.
like going into a Blockbuster store and like,
It's
what do I
amazing
buy?
how many people come up to me and tell me about a show they're watching that I've never heard, and then I'll look and I
Yeah.
hear it's a huge hit, and you're like, it's
But they
it's
only
very
last like a season or two, and they're short seasons, and then they're gone. I think what you were talking about is to have that. It's an amazing luxury and a gift to have season upon season when we're doing 22 seasons, 22 episodes a season, because you learn so much about the characters, about the process, and you can't help but get better at it.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And feel more comfortable, and it shows. And I realize that it's so rare now to see that. I mean, if you get, they were talking about the Pit having, what was it, 15 episodes being a remarkable thing nowadays.
Right.
I mean, we were really fortunate in the broadcast world to have that be the norm.
We got an order after this going into the third season of 2 seasons of 25 each. So we got a 50 episode order.
What a dream.
It was the most fascinating thing for me when we were picked up for 50. I purchased a house, Rob. I don't think you ever did, but my whole family, they're all in real estate. So I purchased a house, and I'd had that Tinker Toy rental furniture in New York, and finally I had a bed. I had a washer and dryer. You know what I mean? I had a house. But what happened for me when Northern Exposure was picked up for 50 that I didn't know was even lurking within me was my desire to move to Texas. I couldn't allow myself to even acknowledge that existed within me. But the minute we were picked up for 50, I was like, okay, I want a pickup truck, a horse, a ranch. It was bizarre because it was this sort of freedom. They don't even do that anymore. You never get picked up for 50.
So rare.
I don't think they even did it then. I think it was so rare, right, Rob?
It was pretty unprecedented, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think on some of the procedurals, over the years, they've done stuff like that once they were established, but it was very rare.
It's so nice in a way to see the upside of streaming is that people gravitate again toward the shows that we watched in the 90s and over the years, and find that there are 6, 8, 10 seasons and fall in love with characters the way it was meant to be, and to have. But I'm glad to never lose touch with those shows. I'm grateful for that aspect of it. But the two seasons and out of 8 episodes each, it's hard for anyone to number one, get attached the way we used to as an audience, but also to make a living.
Right. You forget, like when the show comes back, you're like, wait, what happened on that show? Like it's a year later. Like the morning show just came on and I was like, I don't even remember what was going on that.
Well, the rising generations can watch the episodes too now, which I really like. And there's just so many, the youth that are loving the show. And so that's fun. The legacy can continue because, DVDs, the rising generations, they barely even have televisions.
But yeah, we keep coming upon, 20 somethings and, 15-year-olds that are watching Northern now.
It feels so good to hear that.
Yeah. Mainly because it feels like, I watch everything. I sample everything. I really see a lot of TV. I don't necessarily stick with it, but I check it out. And there's such a strain of cynicism, understandably, in so much of it that, I love that there's an example of something that had a heart and a soul.
Well, Northern Exposure was not political, right? Northern Exposure
It
was just
wasn't
a small
overtly.
town. Yeah, and if it made a comment, it was just sort of organic within these sort of sincere individuals trying to find themselves. It wasn't really made. They didn't feel the
It was.
pressure to
It
be
had its
or
political. It just didn't. It wasn't partisan. It didn't have a political
exactly.
agenda,
Yeah, well
right?
put, Rob. Well
Yeah.
put. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah, it made me think of that scene. I think it was in the Russian flu when they were talking at the town hall.
The
Right.
And
Trotskyites. They called Fleischman a Trotskyite.
there's something, and I can see why nowadays there would be a real audience for that. The kind of independent thinking, that Alaskan spirit.
We talk all the time about the town halls, but if you think about it, Alaska's so close to Russia, so the Alaskans would have been very aware of what was happening in Russia.
I also want to point out, because every episode, and this was the wardrobe department, Catherine and Mimi, and Sandra, they would give Shelley earrings that were thematic. And
Yes.
in this episode, I happen to clock. Sometimes I can't clock it, but the idea that Adam comes back and is offering real cuisine at the Brick, and Shelley is wearing looks like silver or pewter earrings that are plates and silverware.
I noticed that. They were stunning.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's so they
yeah.
were so thorough in that way. I mean, there's such a great idea. I guess it was Catherine's idea originally. I think Cynthia even tried to start an earring line at one point. I don't know if it went, but
Oh, that would have been
What a
so
great
fun.
idea. And
yeah.
the other thing I loved that the show did, and that I think you were talking about earlier, the dream sequences were phenomenal.
They were
Mm.
phenomenal, and this one too. That whole storyline. I was talking a little bit about at the top of this episode. About that notion of the collective unconscious and that how DNA is shared, and how siblings have similar thought patterns or connections, and that the way it manifests, in the way that whole storyline manifests with Chris John Corbett having these dreams about Africa, and then realizing that they were Bernard Richard Cummings dreams, is just so it's just so bold and fascinating, and I think it speaks to some kind of transcendent aspect of existence that I love.
Well, and they took risks with that today that people they may not have taken today. You know, they were willing to do some things that they would never do today.
Right, even putting John in cornrows, like
Yeah,
they'd probably
yeah.
say, no, that's not PC. You're going to get canceled. Misappropriating culture or something like that. When in fact it was the very opposite. It was celebrating culture and yeah, I think those dream sequences were always. I know the directors loved them because they were free to do whatever they wanted.
And the cost I don't know if those were their organic costumes or if Catherine did those costumes, but they were amazing.
They were probably a troupe that they hired, and because that was the choreography was so specific, and the musicians were so specific. I wouldn't be surprised if they were a troupe.
I agree with that. And since people want to know behind the scenes things, it was a night shoot. Night shoots are always tough. And the older I get, the less I like night shoots. You know what I mean? But that it was nighttime, and gosh, that would mean they would either start at 6 p.m. and go to 6 a.m., or they would shoot half a day at noon and wrap by midnight. Of course, if it was on a Friday, it was going to be 4 a.m. because of 12-hour turnarounds.
The hard thing about it is on a TV show, it's one thing if you're on a movie, you probably had this on Cliffhanger. You probably shot your share of nights on that show, but in a movie, you're geared up for it. Like you're going to have a week of nights. But on a TV show, a night comes out of nowhere, and all of a sudden your schedule is flipped, and you're trying to sleep till noon or 1 so that you can have some rest because you're going to be working till 6 a.m. But then the next day or 2 days later, you're going to be getting a 6 a.m. call. And that really, wreaks havoc with their circadian rhythms and all that. But there's something magical. I always, I'm the opposite, Janine. Like I've kind of falling more in love with night shooting as I get older. There's something magical about what happens is, it's almost like you're getting high on being exhausted. And there's something about the energy in the evening that allows for creative choices that normally wouldn't happen.
Creatives are often up late at night anyway. We're not usually morning people. We're night owls. But I remember walking out to the set at 2 a.m. Remember, Rob, all those times? And my hands would just be so hot, I would just be, okay. And you're correct that there would just be a vulnerability. There'd be a sort of like, okay, it's just going to be whatever it is at 2 a.m.
Right.
Which is freeing.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's your best work.
I agree. It's that's what, it's funny when I'm sick and I have to work, if I have a flu or a cold or something, between takes is awful, but the actual acting is usually better than ever because I just don't give a crap,
Well, and the crew that has to work all the time, we would get breaks. We could go rest in our trailers or whatever, but the crew has to be there the entire time. And they started changing those union rules because of the crew members. And they would send us home at 2 a.m, 3 a.m, 4 a.m, like, go home now. And you're so exhausted. But crew members had that, they would be there sometimes a lot longer than we were. And they finally changed the crew rules that they couldn't work a certain amount of hours. They had to be able to cut those hours, and they need to be able to drive home safely because they would drive home at night and have wrecks and whatnot because it was just, they were so tired. People don't understand that in showbiz, how long the hours are, right, Jessica?
No idea, especially for an hour show. It is. I've always told people that is the most grueling work on a regular basis, particularly for the crew, because they don't get those breaks.
People would come visit on the set and they'd be there for about 8 hours. And they'd say, okay, when are we going home? And I say, well, not for about another 8. You know what I mean?
I just want to point out, I'm looking at my list of lines that I wrote down. And I just love when Joel says about Sicily. I think he says it to you, Jessica. He says, it's not beyond the middle of nowhere. It's the end of nowhere. Anyway, this has been so lovely catching up with you, and I'm glad you're doing well. You look great.
Thank you. You guys are great. And I have to say, I'm really enjoying the show. I've been catching up on episodes. I'm so glad you're doing this.
Well, thanks.
It's really, I'm thrilled. And I was so surprised and happy when you reached out. So I'm so glad I got to see you.
Oh, it's always a treat for us because, we haven't seen each other in 30 years or so. And so Rob and I are on, and our guest comes on, and we haven't seen him in so long. So we joke, it's kind of like, what's behind curtain number 1, curtain number 2, curtain number 3. And it's so fun.
It feels so good to see everybody, your crew members and other actors again after so long.
It's a reunion. And we've been singing your praises when we were doing Russian Flu and whatnot about what a terrific actress you are and a lovely person. And thank you for joining us today because you brought that character to life. And your character, even though you weren't there, we talked about you. And there was a whole episode where I had to pretend like I was Elaine. Did you ever see that episode? And I wore the spaghetti strap dress.
I think it was the episode where I get the Dear Joel letter.
She probably didn't see those. If she didn't watch the episode, she wouldn't have gotten the script.
It's definitely time to go back and revisit everything.
Yeah. So you were mentioned, and you had voiceovers that you did in certain episodes. So even though you were,
that's right. I remember working with Martin.
Right.
Martin Bruce-Lee.
We love Martin.
Well, thank you, Jessica. You're terrific. Rob, always a joy. This is like the joy of my week. Seeing you again, Rob, and seeing you, Jessica. And thank you for listening. Do hit that subscribe button. Share the joy, is what I like to say.
Share the joy.
Well, share the joy. North to the future. And Rob, it was great. And we'll see you next week. And we're signing off with O'Connell and Fleischman.
Actually, I think it should be Fleischman O'Connell.
You're right. In your dreams, Fleischman.
Northern Disclosure is a production with Evergreen Podcasts and executive produced by Paul Anderson and Scott McCarthy for Workhouse Media.